Good morning. It's quite a chilly day today. Welcome to you. I'm Molly Brinkerhoff, today's worship associate. Welcome to everyone, old friends and new friends. Welcome to those here in the sanctuary and those who are watching us virtually. And we have about 5 people doing that. With Anita Carpenter is also watching, so welcome, and Rob Logan. So all of you are essential part of our gathering today. Whether today is your first time or your 1,000th Sunday in our midst. I'm not sure we have anybody that's still 1,000s. Maybe Arthur and Annalise. I've been through a lot myself, but I'm not sure I've done 1,000. But in our midst, we are stronger because everyone is with us. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, genders. We are all growing, all learning, and all loved. Just as you are welcome here. So, before we get started, I have a few announcements, and we have quite a few today, but one is silence your phone. I'm one of the worst ones, so be sure to silence your phone. Make sure your sound is down as well. If you're watching us virtually, please let us know who's watching us today and go into the chat box. We will be having joys, sorrows, and concerns today, and if you are here in the sanctuary, please fill out a form from our usher right there, our greeter. So if you need it, go grab her, Judy. If you're out there virtually, please put it into the chat box, and if you haven't already emailed it to us. Okay, today is our second Sunday meal right after church. All are welcome, even if you didn't bring anything. If you're new, especially if you're new, come as our guest. Hopefully there's enough. Usually there's plenty. Also, if you're interested, this is for the men or people who identify as male. You can go to the men's group on January 13th, and if you're interested, please contact Jim Sathy. Jim, can you... And if you have any questions. Victoria, our president, has asked me if we could corral a couple of younger men or strong men to help move this tree into the garage so it can be, it's really heavy, so we really need some. Oh, it has to be taken apart into 3 parts, so we would be so grateful if a couple of men would step up and help with that. January 22nd, please put this on your calendar, is our annual meeting for our church. To vote, you do have to be a member, but you are certainly, anyone is welcome to come and see how we conduct business here at our congregation. And then at some time down the road, if you're interested in becoming a member, that's an option you have. But then also I was asked to mention the Martin Luther King dinner, which is on January 19th, and if anybody is interested, I know Cindy Logan is interested, and Victoria, there's a number of people. So if you are interested, maybe we can get a table. Is that what you're thinking? Yeah. Right, so if you're interested, talk to either Cindy or Victoria, and we'll see what we can put together. So, welcome. We will now move into the sacred time of worship. I'm going to be ringing the gongs, so settle yourself, relax, take several deep breaths as I ring our gongs. We will begin our service with our prelude. Our covenant, along with our 7 Unitarian Universalist principles, is our guide to how our congregation will relate to each other and the world. As I read our church covenant for us all, please recite it with me. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We will now be lighting our chalice. If you at home have a chalice or a candle available, please light yours with us. May this flame, the symbol of transformation since time began, fire our curiosity, strengthen our wills, and sustain our courage as we seek what is good within and around us.
Good morning. Our call to worship this morning is from the poem At the River Clarion, parts 1 and 2 by Mary Oliver. I don't know who God is exactly, but I tell you this. I was sitting in the river named Clarion on a water-splashed stone, and all afternoon I listened to the voice of the river talking. Whenever the water struck a stone, it had something to say, and the water itself, and even the mosses trailing under the water. And slowly, very slowly, it became clear to me what they were saying. Said the river, I am part of holiness. And I too, said the stone. And I too, whispered the moss beneath the water. I'd been to the river before a few times. Don't blame me. Don't blame the river that nothing happened quickly. You don't hear such voices in an hour or a day. You don't hear them at all if selfhood has stuffed your ears, and it's difficult to hear anything anyway through all the traffic, the ambition. If God exists, he is not just butter and good luck. He is also the tick that killed my wonderful dog Luke. Said the river, imagine everything you can imagine, and then keep going. Imagine how the lily, who may also be part of God, would sing to you, if it could sing, if you pause to hear it. And how are you so certain anyway that it doesn't sing? If God exists, he isn't just churches and mathematics. He is the forest, the desert. He's the ice caps that are dying. He's the ghetto and the Museum of Fine Arts. He's Van Gogh and Allen Ginsberg and Robert Motherwell. He's the many desperate hands cleaning and preparing their weapons. He's every one of us, potentially. The leaf of grass, the genius, the politician, the poet. And if this is true, isn't it something very important? Yes. It could be that I am a tiny piece of God, and each of you too, or at least of his intention and his hope, which is a delight beyond measure. I don't know how you get to suspect such an idea. I only know that the river kept singing. It wasn't a persuasion. It was all the river's own constant joy, which was better by far than a lecture, which was comfortable, exciting, unforgettable. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire.
Thank you. morning. Our Time for All Ages story is The Little Cub by Oliver Dunray. A little cub lived all alone near the forest. He did not like being alone. He did not like the dark nights. There was no one to take care of him. Old Bear lived all alone deep in the forest. He did not like being alone. He did not like the dark nights. There was no one to take care of him. Every morning the little cub splashed in the stream. He watched the silvery fish swimming around his toes. Said the little cub. I wish I knew how to catch a fish. But there was no one to teach him. Every morning Old Bear trudged to the stream. He caught a large fish for his breakfast. Said Old Bear. I wish I had someone to share this fish with. But there was no one. Every afternoon, the little cub scampered in the meadow, looked for berries. What he most longed for was the sweet honey he could smell in the beehive in the hollow of a tree. But the little cub was afraid of being stung by the bees. His stomach was empty. Little cub was often hungry. There he is. Poor guy. Every afternoon, Old Bear ate a big lunch of oatcake spread thick with honey. After eating his fill, he stretched out in the meadow and took a nap. His stomach was full. Old Bear wasn't often hungry. Every evening, the little cub curled himself into a ball and tried to sleep. He snuffed and whimpered. He did not like to be alone at night. Every evening, Old Bear trudged through the tall grass to his cabin in the forest. Old Bear grumbled and grumped. He did not like to be alone all of the time. Being alone made him grumpy and grumbly. One day, Old Bear heard a strange noise coming from a pile of rocks. He stopped and he listened. Old Bear peered into the rocks and saw a little cub curled into a ball, snuffling and kicking in his sleep. Old Bear leaned over the little cub and sniffed. The little cub opened his eyes and yowled. "Stop that yowling," said Old Bear, and the little cub stopped yowling. He stared at the big bear watching him. "Who are you?" asked the little cub. "I'm Old Bear," said Old Bear. "Who are you?" "I'm me," said little cub. They're introducing themselves. Old Bear and the little cub stared hard at each other. Neither of them blinked. "Humph," said Old Bear. "Humph," said little cub. Old Bear picked up the little cub. "Who do you belong to?" asked Old Bear. "I belong to me," said the little cub. "But maybe I could belong to you?" Old Bear cradled the little cub. He yawned loudly. "I'm going to call you Little Cub," said Old Bear. "I like that," said Little Cub. Old Bear carried Little Cub to his cabin. He gently placed Little Cub in the big bed. He tucked his warm blanket around him. "Will you teach me how to fish?" asked Little Cub. "Yes, I'll teach you how to fish. Now go to sleep," said Old Bear. "Will you teach me how to get honey?" asked Little Cub. "Yes, I'll teach you how to get honey. Now go to sleep." "But I don't want to get stung by bees," said Little Cub. "I won't let you get stung by the bees," Old Bear said. "Now go to sleep." Old Bear sat by the bed. Little Cub stared at Old Bear. "What now?" asked Old Bear. "I can't sleep," said Little Cub. "Do you want me to tell you a story?" asked Old Bear. "Yes, I'd like that," said Little Cub. "I've never had a story before." "Once upon a time there was a grumpy old bear who lived all alone deep in the forest," said Old Bear. Little Cub closed his eyes. He fell fast asleep. He was no longer hungry. He was no longer alone. Old Bear sat by Little Cub all night long. "Good night, Little Cub," said Old Bear. "I'm glad you're here." The end.
We will now sing the children out.
As we leave this friendly place, on the way to heavenly place, may the kindness which we learn guide our hearts till we return.
Okay. Ours is a welcoming community where we find connection, a spiritual community where we find meaning. Ours is a sharing community where our joys are amplified, a caring community where our sorrows are lessened. We take this moment to reflect on our joys and sorrows and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. I will now read the joys and concerns and sorrows we received. So we have a sorrow from Karen Croft. She asked that we please light a candle for her little fur baby dog, Casper, who has been diagnosed with a lymphoma and is having a very difficult time. And let's see. That's not what let's see if there's any. Okay. And so then from Cindy, her son his expectant wife and our 3-year-old grandson all came down with COVID. Dad and son are fine, but wife is having a hard go of it. That's got to be terrible if she's pregnant as well. And Cindy again is so grateful for this lovely sunny day. From Bambi, she has a joy. I'm so happy for this new year as I have opened my small art shop and have applied to art school. Where is she? Good, great. But she also has a sorrow. Her grandmother's memorial is next week, and she knows it's going to be a really tough to go through. So our heart goes out to you for that. So may we remember those who have spoken, those they have named, and those we hold in our silence and in our hearts for one last candle.
Our reading this morning is from the book The Future of Faith by Harvey Cox. Scholars of religion refer to the current metamorphosis in religiousness with phrases like the move to horizontal transcendence or the turn to the immanent. But it would be more accurate to think of it as the rediscovery of the sacred in the immanent, the spiritual within the secular. More people seem to realize that it is our everyday world, not some other one that, in the words of the poet Gerard Manley Hopkins, is charged with the grandeur of God. The advance of science has increased the sense of awe we feel at the immense scale of the universe or the complexity of the human eye. People turn to religion more for support in their efforts to live in this world and make it better, and less to prepare for the next. The pragmatic and experienced elements of faith as a way of life are displacing the previous emphasis on institutions and beliefs. It is true that for many people, faith and belief are just two words for the same thing, but they are not the same. And in order to grasp the magnitude of the religious upheaval now underway, it is important to clarify the difference. Faith is about deep-seated confidence. In everyday speech, we usually apply it to people we trust or the values we treasure. It is what theologian Paul Tillich called ultimate concern, a matter of what the Hebrews spoke of as the heart. Belief, on the other hand, is more like an opinion. We often use the term in everyday speech to express a degree of uncertainty. I don't really know about that, but I believe it may be so. Beliefs can be held lightly or with emotional intensity, but they are more propositional than existential. We can believe something to be true without making much difference to us, but we place our faith only in something that is vital for the way we live. Of course, people sometimes confuse faith with beliefs, but it will be hard to comprehend the tectonic shift in religiousness today unless we understand the distinction between the two. An offering to support the mission of this church will now be given and gratefully received. Every few years over the last century or so, it seems that some group of theologians or philosophers announce the imminent demise of organized religion. So far, at least, such prophetic visions have failed to come to pass. There are now over 8 billion people on earth, and most of us still identify with one of the many religions that have emerged during the human journey. It is true, however, that studies confirm there has been a continuous decline in recent decades in the number of Americans affiliated with organized religion across almost every religious faith. And the situation in Europe and many other developed countries displays an even greater trend away from organized religion. Indeed, the data reveals that the only two demographic groups that are experiencing consistent growth are either those who claim no religious affiliation or those who identify as spiritual but not religious, which is an obviously vague category of people with all sorts of notions about what being spiritual means. As of 2021, it was estimated that over 29% of all Americans fall into one of these categories. And even those who profess a strong sense of spirituality don't find it necessary or appealing to commit to a religious community. They do not wish to be bound to a specific group of spiritual seekers, and they often cite the rejection of the beliefs they are supposed to share to be recognized as a member as the reason for their reluctance. It is problematic, for example, for people who accept the scientific evidence for evolution and the Big Bang to remain in religious institutions that insist on the inerrancy of Scripture and cling to a medieval imagination of the cosmos, heaven above, hell below, and the earth as simply a stage for the unfolding drama of salvation. It is simply too difficult for many people to feign untenable beliefs, so they leave. And they are leaving in droves. So given the current waning state of organized religion, this morning I want to explore the question, is religion necessarily about belief? Or has that become a common misunderstanding? And if so, what are the implications? Or to put it another way, if untenable beliefs are driving people away from religious communities, is a religion that has moved beyond belief the answer to their spiritual yearnings? And if so, does our Unitarian Universalist faith offer such a spiritual community? The meaning of the word religion has evolved over the centuries. The word comes to us from the Latin root ligare, which means to bind. Religion is one of those cultural phenomena that bind us together into groups. The word was originally used to describe personal devotion and a sense of awe and wonder, rather than adherence to a set of beliefs. And speaking of religions in the plural is a relatively recent shift that occurred only after the beliefs, practices, and institutions of different traditions have been codified and held up for comparison, usually in an effort to show the explicit truth of one particular religion over and above another. In the Western world, which has been dominated by Christianity for almost 2,000 years, the importance of beliefs clumped together in the form of various creeds became central to the idea of being religious since at least the 4th century. Having the faith of Jesus and living one's life accordingly was replaced by professing officially approved beliefs about Jesus. And this has shaped our understanding of what it means to be religious ever since. For centuries, differing beliefs have been the cause of conflicts between different faiths and the splintering into various sects within faiths, often over seemingly trivial disputes. Just within Protestant Christianity, there are now over 41,000 different sects. And there are numerous sects that emerged within the otherworld traditions as well. And of course, we know that the history of religious factionalization is full of violence and bloodshed that continues to our present time. Far too often, our species has been willing to kill our fellow humans over an idea, as if doing so somehow validates one belief over another. Religious intolerance draws on that deep-seated fear of the other that lurks in our reptilian brain. And it is so easily whipped into frenzied violence by those who unscrupulously misuse this power. If you look up the word religion in a dictionary today, you typically find something like the following 3 definitions from Merriam-Webster's online dictionary. Definition 1, a personal set or institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices. Definition 2, the service and worship of God or the supernatural. And definition 3, a cause, principle, or system of beliefs held to with ardor and faith. In all 3 cases, there is an explicit or implicit understanding that religion is centered on some set of beliefs, especially in something supernatural. Though the 3rd definition does try to broaden the meaning to include faith in a cause, principle, or system. As you can guess, I think such definitions confirm the unfortunate but common misunderstanding of belief versus faith as being essential to religiosity that Harvey Cox described in our reading this morning. Beliefs exist in our heads, in our thoughts. Beliefs are shaped by our intellectual exploration of the world as we struggle to find meaning. Religious beliefs are important because they express our understanding of the fundamental questions of existence. What are we and why are we here? What is our relationship with the interdependent web of all existence? What does it mean when we die? Beliefs are necessary for defining our ultimate concern, but they are not sufficient as an expression of faith in that ultimate concern. As our reading described, faith is a matter of the heart. Faith is a felt spiritual connection and is reflected in our actions. To be religious is to align certain aspects and practices in one's life to express the yearnings of a heartfelt faith in one's ultimate concern. to be truly transformative in our lives, religion must be felt deeply. And I believe it is beneficial and powerful to be religious in a supportive community of spiritual seekers. Wrestling with the meaning of life is hard enough without trying to tough it out alone. Fortunately, all of us here have found such a community. The story of our Unitarian Universalist faith has long been a story of creative tension between the head and the heart, between reason, science, and comparative religious studies on the one hand, and the direct experience of the sacred, transcendentalism, and mysticism on the other. We do not shy away from questioning and searching for truth intellectually, but as highly educated, thinking people, we have tended to favor the head over the heart. In the early decades of the 1800s, Ralph Waldo Emerson rightly criticized what he called the corpse-cold Unitarianism of his day, and challenged our ministers to move beyond the constraints of a dry, liberal Christianity, to truly live in the world and speak about being alive. Transcendentalism, inspired by European Romanticism, soon began to inspire new generations to look to nature as a wellspring of spiritual connection. And some of our spiritual ancestors began to explore Eastern traditions that offered new possibilities that were very different from traditional Western thought. And especially after Darwin, humanism began to gain popularity, offering seekers a religion with a secular ultimate concern in the progress of humankind, with plenty of room left for awe and wonder at the cosmos. As we entered the 20th century, there was still a dominant emphasis on reason and thinking rather than feeling. But at least we were accepting of the growing diversity of beliefs in our congregations. We have long prided ourselves on being a creedless faith, that it values the freedom of conscience and places no shackles of belief on those who join our ranks. There have always been those among us who yearned for a more clearly articulated common set of beliefs, and even a return to being a liberal form of Christianity. But this has never come to pass, and if anything, we have continued to grow in diversity in sometimes surprising ways. If you're less than satisfied with Unitarian Universalism today, just wait a decade or so. I have been a UU for over 35 years, and it is a different experience to be a UU now than it was when I first joined. The most obvious differences to me are that we have grown far more comfortable with spiritual language in our worship services, and we have begun to speak more about our feelings and our experiences of the sacred in whatever form it takes. Just like Emerson's corpse-cold religion in the 1800s, my experience of Unitarian Universalism in the 1980s and 90s was one that emphasized humanism, reason, and social justice to an extent that sometimes left me yearning for more satisfying spiritual food. All those things are important, of course, but had I not begun to explore Taoism, Buddhism, nature spirituality, and mysticism on my own, I'm not sure I would have stuck around. It is important that we retain our intellectual curiosity and faith in science and reason. And I hope that we never abandon the scholarly pursuit of the so-called learned ministry. But it is also important for us to nurture the experience and transformative power of religious feelings, to find a balance between the head and the heart. I think this evolution in our faith reflects a uniquely Unitarian Universalist flavor of the main thesis that Harvey Cox presents in his book, The Future of Faith, that religiousness in general is undergoing a metamorphosis, a turn to the immanent, the rediscovery of the sacred in the immanent, the spiritual within the secular. He suggests that we are experiencing a significant moment in human history, a transition from what he calls the age of belief to the age of the Spirit. The reasons for this shift are complicated and subject to debate, but declining faith in our religious and civic institutions in the decades after the Second World War and the looming environmental crises that have certainly contributed. Even for humanists, enthusiasm for the onward and upward progress of humankind has been diminished in the wake of witnessing the incredible human capacity for destruction and the inadvertent consequences that sometimes result from new technology that seemed so promising. Religion is becoming more about spiritual experience, personal faith, and public practice than about holding certain sets of beliefs. And the increasing numbers of the unaffiliated and spiritual but not religious lend support to his thesis. Among Christian denominations, Pentecostalism, which is centered on the direct experience of the Holy Spirit, is the only branch that is growing in leaps and bounds around the globe. There are even Pentecostal Universalist churches emerging. And though we are a much more restrained and liberal expression of religion, I have already said that I believe this same thing is happening in our Unitarian Universalism. If anything, we are further along the path of rediscovering the spiritual within the secular than most religions. And we are moving even further beyond belief. I also feel we have grown less concerned with what I called rejectionism, defining our religion in terms of what we don't believe and who we are not. We have diverse beliefs about life and the cosmos, but the shared values and principles that bind us together as a religious community and the feelings that are evoked in the expression of our faith and worship and in the actions we take in the world are more important than our individual beliefs. In his 1964 book, Being Liberal in an Illiberal Age, the Unitarian Universalist minister Jack Mendelson wrote, "In a Unitarian Universalist congregation, an agnostic may sit beside one who believes in a personal God. At the after-service coffee hour, a believer in reincarnation may stand chatting with one who affirms utter extinction. Such are our diversities in theological belief." Those words still ring true almost 60 years later. It is a testament to our faith that embraces theological diversity. It is part of what brings us together. The other reason we are here is that we have felt the deep yearning for meaning and spiritual connection that I believe is a fundamental aspect of being human. It is a yearning that also moves us to feel compassion and inspires our actions to make this a better world. We recognize that we are bound by a love of life, for the world, and for the common humanity we all share. We are proof that we can hold many diverse beliefs but still come together in a religious community of love, respect, and tolerance. Doctrines, rituals, and other trappings of a religion that are based on beliefs are transient and are often more divisive and harmful than good in the human story. If we are truly coming into an age of the Spirit, perhaps we can engage our heads and hearts to break down barriers that divide us and recognize the sacred in each other. Perhaps in the end, we just need to listen to the wisdom of the Dalai Lama, who said, "My religion is very simple. My religion is kindness." I invite you to again rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 346, "Come Sing a Song with Me." Our closing words are the poem Wild Geese by Wendell Berry. Horseback on Sunday morning, harvest over, we taste persimmon and wild grape, sharp, sweet, of summer's end. In time's maze over the fall fields, we name names that rest on graves. We open a persimmon seed to find the tree that stands in promise, pale in the seed's marrow. Geese appear high over us, pass, and the sky closes. Abandon, as in love or sleep, holds them to their way, clear in the ancient faith. What we need is here. And we pray not for a new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye clear. What we need is here.
Please join me in extinguishing our chalice with the following words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And please join us downstairs for our shared meal after the postlude.